So today's a huge day in the markets. We've seen very large moves in Micron, which is now up almost 18% at a $1 trillion market cap. So AMD and Micron were sort of in a race to whoever hit $1 trillion in market cap. It seemed like they were somewhat close. And then, of course, Micron's up 17 or 18% today. So Micron has taken the cake on that race. Very exciting. But what's most exciting about Micron, I think, in this move is that the PE ratio, the forward PE ratio, is still just 11. And that comes at the same time where almost all of the analyst expectations for the last year have been way low. So I think there's a reasonable question. Micron's guidance has always been very conservative, and the analyst expectations have been way off. So what happens if Micron keeps beating guidances and the forward PE ratio, when we actually see the next reportings of the next earnings, is actually way low again, and maybe the forward PE ratio is actually only 6, which I think is a really good possibility of happening. Then some of the other market movers, AMD is also up, 5% plus today. And so AMD has achieved a market cap of 800 billion. So that's great to see, because basically when you have agentic AI that has that carries out specialized tasks for people, not only do you need a lot of memory, and that's causing a large memory shortage, but you also need a lot of CPUs to power actually the workforce. So I think this trade kind of goes hand in hand. The interesting thing about memory and CPUs is simply that it's the agentic AI build out seems to be very early in its infancy. When you build a data center, I think it costs to build like a gigawatt data center $50 billion. And then after you build it, you can lease them out for around $30 billion a year, which is very interesting. And actually, that might be very low, because SpaceX, in their reporting, they're reporting that they're leasing out, just a third of a gigawatt. And they're leasing that out for $15 billion a year. So maybe what you can lease a gigawatt out for is actually closer to 50 billion. And so when you think about the ROI on data centers, that you can maybe build this for 50 billion and lease it out for $50 billion a year for the next decade, that's got to be one of the best ROIs ever. And so you've got Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Oracle, CoreWeave, Nebius, everybody's building these data centers. And the ROI on them appears to be so high that not only do I expect their stock performance to be very good as they continue to grow their earnings for shareholders, but I also expect the semiconductor trade to not slow down. Like, if you were having an ROI of 100% on a data center, do you think you're going to buy less, memory chips and CPUs the next year and GPUs? So I'm very bullish on NVIDIA, AMD, Micron, SanDisk, and I'm also bullish on Microsoft and Google and Oracle, and then companies like Dell as well that can make a lot of the servers and stuff to power these to power this sort of build out. So at the same time, another market mover today is Applovin, and Applovin's up 6%, and so it's nice to see some of the high growth software that has kind of been trashed for the last year to date start to bounce back, and people start to say, hey, if there is a company growing their GAAP earnings per share at 60%, 80% year over year, maybe we should be valuing that instead of trashing it, because eventually you can't have a stock that sells off 50% and earns 5 times more than they did the year before. And that's exactly what we saw in memory. We saw these stocks kind of get trashed, and they had super low PE ratios, and then they just delivered the earnings. And so now the rally is really driven by fundamentals. And there's people out there in the market right now saying these are overpriced. I should short Micron. I should short SanDisk. But what I say to them is look, if SanDisk a year ago was worth $30 a share, and they're guiding for next quarter earning $33 a share just in one quarter. So if you think about that, if they hadn't have rallied, they would have a PE ratio of 0.2 for something that seems to be pretty high growth, and there's a potential that it continues to accelerate the demand for solid state drives that Micron and SanDisk make. So I think this is a rally backed by just great fundamentals, enormous earnings growth, and I remain very bullish in these names. So we'll see what the market movers bring for us tomorrow. Thank you guys, everybody. Just to close that up, I'm John Tinsman. I run the AOTG ETF and the AOTS ETF.